Let's recap. In the previous session, we have already written the register API and login API related to authentication. We also have seen about a third-party package bcrypt. We understood about the hash and compare methods of this package. Right. Coming to today's session. So once the client logs in, right? So if the client makes a HTTP request, we need some authentication mechanisms to authenticate it, right? So we'll understand about them. One of which is token authentication. So we'll understand about the JSON web token there, okay? And we'll see about the various methods related to that, okay? So to set the code playground for today's session, you need to run this command, okay? And then navigate to the my app directory and run npm install. So with this, all the dependencies will get installed. So as we understood, right? So firstly, for the user to log in, he has to register, right? So we need a register API, and then the user has to log in. So for that, we need the login API. So we are done with these two APIs. Okay, now the user has been successfully logged in, right? So now, once the client has logged in, right? So later on, whenever he makes a HTTP request, the server has to verify whether the client has logged in or not. Okay, so the client has logged in, so he got a message saying logged in successfully, right? But how will the server verify whether the client is logged in or not, right? So there should be a mechanism to verify whether the client is logged in or not, right? So how will the server verify whether a client is logged in or not? That's a question, right? So for this, there are few commonly used authentication mechanisms. So there's token authentication, session authentication. So out of which, in today's session, we are going to see about token authentication. Okay. So in the token authentication mechanism, so there's something called access token. So you can consider access token as a set of characters using which we can identify a user. So access token is like a string, a set of characters. Okay. Using this, we can identify a user. So using the access token, we can verify whether a user is valid or not. Okay, so for this, we make use of the access token to verify whether a user is valid or not. So you can understand this with the help of the Aadhaar card analogy. So initially, we provide various details like the name, date of birth, gender, phone number, address, our fingerprint, iris scan, and so on, right? So with these details, right? So we finally get an Aadhaar card, right? So there we'll have an Aadhaar number. Okay, we provide all these details and then we'll get the Aadhaar number. So now later on, for various identification purposes or some using various services, right? We just need to provide the Aadhaar number. So each and every time we need not provide all these details. So the Aadhaar number itself would be sufficient for making use of various services, right? So similarly, even in our case, right, initially during the login, we provide the username and the password. Okay, so using this, once our login is successful, the server will generate a token. Okay, so using this token, right? So this token will certify a client, right? Just like how we have Aadhaar number for a person, right? Similarly, we will have this token, okay, which will certify the client. So now this token will be sent to the client. Okay, now whenever the client makes a request, so the client will add this token and will send the request to the server. Okay, now the server, so we'll take the access token, will verify whether it's valid or not, and then appropriately it will send the response. Okay, clear? So here, each and every time, the client need not send all the details. So it just needs to send the access token. Okay, so that's the advantage here. Okay, so you understood the process, right? Once the user has logged in, okay, so an access token will be generated by the server and will be sent to the client. Okay, now the client or the user, right? Now the client, right? So whenever the client makes a HTTP request, will attach the access token along with it and send it to the server. Now the server will verify the access token and then it will send the response. Okay, clear? So now here we need to understand one thing, that is how do we create and verify the access tokens? As we understood, so when the login is successful, access token will be generated by the server and will be sent to the client. So how do we create that? How do we generate the access token? That is one question. And then once the client sends a access token to the server, so the server has to verify this access token. So how will the server verify the access token? So how does the server create and verify the access tokens, right? So let's understand these. So for this, we have JWT, which is nothing but JSON Web Token. So JSON Web Token is actually a standard which is used to create the access tokens. Okay, for any application, if you want to create access tokens, so this JSON Web Token is actually a standard. Okay, so in short form, we call this as JWT. Okay, so the access token generated based on the standard is called the JWT token. Okay, so now, as we understood the process, we have the client or the user and we have the server. So now, when the client wants to log in, so it will provide the username and the password. So a post request will be sent to the server. So now the server will check the username and the password. So if all these are valid, so then the server will create a JWT token. Okay, and then the JWT token will get created and will be sent to the client. Okay, so now the client has the JWT token. Okay, so now the next thing is, let's say the client wants to send a HTTP request to the server. So now it will send the JWT token in the request. Okay, so that will be sent to the server. Then the server will verify the JWT token. So if it is valid, then it will send the response to the client. Check whether the user is present or not. So if the user exists, we have verified the password. Okay, so now after the password verification is done and is successful, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to generate a JWT token, right? So that is the next step. Okay, let's see how to do this. Okay, so for this, there is a package, a JWT package, using which we can generate the JWT token. So firstly, let's install that. So npm install JSON web token --save. So with this, the JSON web token package will get installed. Okay, so let's do this step. Okay, so here, so let's install. So npm install JSON web token. Okay, --save. So with this, the JSON web token will get installed. Okay, clear? So this step is done. Okay, so now in this package, so there are various methods available. Okay, so to generate the JWT token, the method used is sign. Okay, so when you do jwt.sign, so using this, right, we can generate the JWT token, and using the verify method, we can verify the token. So firstly, let's understand about sign. So jwt.sign off, and we have to provide some arguments. So the first argument is payload. So here in payload, we have to send a JSON object. Okay, so here in our case, we are going to send the user information. Okay, so we need to send some payload using which a token will get generated. So based on that payload, so a token will be generated. Okay, so here in our case, we are sending the user information. Okay, and the second argument is a secret key. Okay, so here coming to the secret key, right? So this, you can consider it as a random string. You can take any random string. So you have to keep a random string as a secret key on the server side. Okay, string on the server side, it should be a secret key. Okay, so that we have to provide it here. It could be any random string, but you have to provide it here. Okay, and then we have the callback, which is optional. We'll get to know about it when it's necessary. Okay, clear? So using the sign method, okay, we can create a JWT token. Okay, we have to provide the payload based on which the token will be generated, and we need to give the secret key. Okay, with this we'll get the JWT token. Okay, now coming to the verifying part. So for this, there is a verify method. Okay, so jwt.verify off, and the first argument is the token that we want to verify. Okay, so that JWT token that we want to verify, that we have to pass as the first argument. And coming to the second argument, the second argument is actually a secret key, right? So the secret key that we have provided previously, so we have to provide it here to verify the JWT token. Okay, as we understood, on the server side, we have to maintain a secret key, right? So that secret key we have to provide here, and then there is a callback function. Okay, clear? So this function will return the payload using which the token has been generated. Okay, as we previously understood, when it comes to generating the token, we give a payload and a secret key. With this, the token will be generated. So for the verify, right? So for this, when we provide the token and the secret key, the corresponding payload will be the written value. There you can see, right? So when this is valid, so there's a callback function also. We'll understand as we proceed further. Okay, so in case if there is an error, right? So this will throw an error. Okay, so in case it's not valid, if the JWT token is not valid, so then it will throw an error. Okay, clear? So the JWT verify method will verify the token, and if it is valid, it will return the payload. If not, if it's not valid, so then it will throw an error. Okay, clear? These aspects. So as we write further, you'll understand. Okay, so firstly, so in the login API, so firstly we have to import the package. So JSON web token, we are importing it. So the next thing is we have to generate a token. So if the password matches, it means that the login is successful, right? So then we have to generate a JWT token, right? So for that, we need to provide the payload. So as we understood, here we are going to provide the user information. So that is a username. Okay, we are going to provide a JSON, okay, which has the username. Okay. Next, so using this payload and a secret key, right? So you can provide any secret key, right? So that secret key you're going to provide it there. So with this, a token will be generated. So this token we have to send as a response. So there you can see response.send off, and we are sending that token as a JSON object. Okay, clear? So with this, when we do this sending the HTTP request, the login request, so we'll get the JWT token as a response if the username and the password match appropriately, if the account exists. So the corresponding token will be as a result. Okay, clear? So now let's try this out. Okay, so here let's go to index.js file. So here you can see, so firstly we have the initialized DB, and then this is getbooks API, this is the register API. Here we have the login API. So we are concerned about this, right? So here we are doing various things. So firstly we are getting the username and the password. So then we are checking whether there is a user or not. So in case if there is no user, then we are showing that it's an invalid user. In case if there is a user, then we are checking whether the password matches or not. So if the password matches, then we are sending a response saying login success. Okay, a message. So now here, this is where we are concerned about. Once the login is successful, right, we want to generate a token, right? So let's do that part. So for that, firstly, we need to import a package. So which is part of JSON web token. Okay, and we'll store this. Okay, so we have imported this package. So now coming back to this part. Okay, so for so we are going to use the JWT.sign method, right? So to use the sign method, the first argument is a payload, the second argument is a secret key, right? Coming to the payload, right? So here the payload, based on the payload itself, the token will be generated. So here we want to send the user information. So let's have the payload first. Okay. So in this we have the username as the username. So we want to send the username. This is our payload. Okay. So the next thing is we want to generate the token. So JWT.sign of payload, comma, and then we have to provide the secret key. So you can have any random string as a secret key on the server side. Okay, I created something. Okay, so this will give us a JWT token. Okay, so I'm storing that. Okay, so now we have the token. So the next thing is we have to send this as a response, right? So response.send of, we'll send this as a JSON. Okay, clear? So we are done with the steps, right? So let's test this. So firstly we need to run the server. So node.mod index.js. So the server is running now, there you can see, right? The next thing is we'll go to the goodreads.http file. So here we have the login, right? So now let's send the request. So there you can see we got the token, right? Can you see that? So this is the JWT token that has been generated. Okay. So in case if the username or the password is not given properly, so then we'll appropriately get as invalid user or invalid password. Since here the username and password, there is an account with that username and the password is also matching. So the login is successful. So we got this token. Okay, clear? So we are done with getting a token, right? So there you can see we got a result in this manner, right? So here, so the login, when it is successful, so a token has been generated and it has been sent as a response to the client. So these steps are done. So the next thing is, so whenever the client makes a request, so the client has to add this token into the HTTP request and send it to the server. So now, how will the client pass the JWT token to the server? So there are different ways that we have seen so far. Either path parameters, query parameters, or JWT token, either as path parameters or query parameters. Then what will happen? So the URL is public, right? So when it's navigating through the entire network through different routers, right? So someone in between can actually misuse that token, right? They can copy that token present in the URL since the URL is public, and they can misuse that token, right? So that is not the solution, right? Now, another way is using the request body. Okay, so if we are passing the token in the request body, so in case of the get method, so we actually won't have the request body, right? So or for each and every API call, we have to have a request body, right? So this is also not advisable. So now, what is the solution? So here in the HTTP request, as we understood, there are various paths. Okay, so there is HTTP headers, there is body, right? So here for this authorization part, so we can make use of the HTTP headers. So there is an authorization header. So in the authorization header, we can add the JWT token. Okay, so bearer space, and we can specify the JWT token. Okay, clear? So like this, we can provide the JWT token. So now when the server receives this HTTP request, appropriately from the header, it can extract the token and verify whether it's valid or not, and appropriately send the response. Okay, clear? So now there you can see. So in the HTTP request that we are making, so there's authorization, bearer, space, and then we'll provide the token that we have generated. Okay, clear? So let's do this step. Okay, so there you can see this is the one that we have got, right? So now there you can see, right? So now let's copy this part. So we can just actually copy like this. So then here in the HTTP file, right? So there you can see, so for the getbooks API, so we have this get, and then we have authorization, bearer, space, and here we have to provide the JWT token. Okay, so we have copied it. So the entire JSON will get copied. So I'm just removing that part. Okay. So there you can see we have the bearer, and then after that, after a space, we have the entire JWT token here. Okay, clear? So we have provided the authorization part here. Okay, clear? So now we understood this, right? So this step is also done. That is sending the JWT token to the server. So the next thing is on the server side, we need to verify the JWT token sent by the client, right? So how do we do that? So as we understood, we can make use of the verify method, right? So here in the getBooks API, right, when we get this call to this API, right? So from the request headers, so we have the authorization header in which we have the JWT token, right? So the headers are stored in the request.headers object. So auth, and you can access the authorization header. So with that, we got the auth header, right? So the next thing is, right, so if the auth header is not undefined, that is, there's some value, okay? So then what we are going to do is we are going to split them based on space. So as we understood in the authorization, we have bearer, space, and then we have the JWT token, right? So after this, if we split it based on the space, so the second thing is the JWT token. So that's the reason we have off1. Indexing starts from 0, right? So we have off1. So with this, we'll get the JWT token. Okay, clear? So now we are going to check if the JWT token is undefined. So then we are going to send the response status as 401. Okay, so if we get the JWT token as undefined, that is, we don't have any JWT token, right? So in that case, it means that the authorization that has been provided is invalid, right? So for that, the response status is 401. So as we have seen, when it comes to the status codes, 401 refers to unauthorized. That is, so that user is not authorized to make a call to this API. Okay, so we are raising that. Okay, so then we are sending a message saying invalid JWT token. Okay, so in case if we have the JWT token, so then we have to verify it. Okay, so let's do the steps till here. Okay, so coming to the index.js file. Okay, so yeah, this is the login API. This is done. Now we are focusing on the getBooks API, right? So now when a request has been made to say getBooks API, okay, we have sent a HTTP request to the getBooks API. Okay, so as we understood, the authorization will be added to the HTTP header, right? So now to access that, so it's the headers will be present in the request object, request.headers object. Okay, so for that, in that we want to specifically access to the authorization header. Okay, so for that we have to mention authorization. So with this we'll get the authorization header. So constant, so auth header. So we are storing that. So now we have to check whether the auth header is valid or not, right? So firstly, so if the auth header is not equal to undefined, so it means that there is an auth header. Okay, so in such scenarios, we have to extract the JWT token from that. Okay, so let's have a variable for that. So let JWT token. So now let's extract the JWT token. So how do we do it? In the auth header, what is the value? Bearer, space, and the JWT token, right? So let's split the auth header based on space. Okay, so and then, so the second one is that JWT token. So now we got the JWT token. Okay, so now we have to verify this JWT token, right? So if the JWT token is undefined, okay, so in such scenarios, so it means that the JWT token that you have sent, right, there's no token that you have sent, obviously, so it means that you have to raise unauthorized, right? So the response.status, so the code for unauthorized is 401. So we are raising that, and we want to send a message, okay, saying invalid JWT token. Okay, so that the client can check the token. Okay, so now in case we have a JWT token, the next step would be verifying the token, right? So let's see the steps related to that. Okay, so as we understood, so there is a verify method in the JWT package. Okay, so JWT.verify of the first argument is a token that we want to verify. So we are passing that. And the second argument is a secret key. So previously we have a secret key, right? So that secret key we have to provide it here. Okay, so then the callback function will be called. Once this verification is done, the callback function will be called. So in case of error, the error will be passed as an argument. In case if the verification is successful, that is the JWT token is valid, then the corresponding payload will be passed. Okay, clear? So this step is clear, right? Okay, so if there is an error, so obviously we'll show it as unauthorized because the token is invalid. So since it's invalid, only then the error will be raised. So that's the reason we are sending the response.status as 401 and the message as invalid JWT token. Whereas, so if we get a payload, right? So if there's no error, right? Then it means that the JWT token is matching, right? So then the entire code of getting the books from the DB and sending that as a response has to be moved into that, okay? So that executing the SQL query against the database, sending the response should happen only when the JWT token is valid, right? So that's the reason we are moving that into that else block. Okay, clear? So now let's try these out. Okay, so here, as we understood, so now we have to verify, right? So JWT.verify, we have to verify the token. So here we have to provide the token first, so JWT token. So now coming to the second argument, we have to provide the secret key, right? So previously, when it comes to the login, while generating the token, we have provided a secret key here. So let's provide the same secret key here. Okay, we have to provide the same. Okay, done. So then we have a callback function. So in the callback function, right, so there is error as one argument, and then another argument is payload. Okay, so now coming to this. So in this, right, if there is an error, okay, so then what do we have to do? So obviously, when will the error occur? When the JWT token is invalid. So obviously it means that unauthorized, right? So we have to send response.status as 401, and then we'll send the message as invalid JWT token. Clear? Okay. So in case if there is no error, it means what, right? So the token is valid. So that's when actually we have to run this SQL query against the database and send as a response. So now we'll move this into the else block. Okay. So this step is also done, right? Clear? So we are done with these steps, right? So one point to note is that this should be, so you can see there's a small issue, right? So that is, we haven't mentioned async, right? So we have to specify that here. Inside this, we are making use of await, right? So we have to specify async here. So we are done with this, and then the server would be restarted, right? Okay, there you can see the server has been restarted. Okay, so now let's go to the .http file. So and let's send the request. Okay, so here you can see we have the /book/, right? So let's send the request. So and there you can see we have the result. Okay, so in case if the authentication that we have provided, let's just make a small change to this. Okay, and try to send the request. So then you can see we got the invalid JWT token. Okay, so only when we provide a valid one, so only then, so we'll appropriately get the result. There you can see, right? Clear? So we are done with these steps also, right? So as we have seen, we have made an API call using the JWT token generated, right? And we have got a response in this manner. In case if the token that we have provided was invalid, so you have seen that we got a message saying invalid JWT token. Okay. In today's session, so we have seen about authentication. We have seen about the various mechanisms related to that. So one of which is token authentication, which we have covered in today's session. So in that we have seen about the JSON Web Token, which is actually a standard to create the access tokens. Okay, so coming to the JWT methods, so we have seen about the sign method and about the verify method. Using the sign method, we'll generate the access token, and using the verify method, we'll verify the JWT token. Okay,